13 padlocks on the basement door. Always at the same hour, always the same sound, iron grinding iron. It was March 1934. The boarding house on Ash Street number 23, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Elena Harper, 41, and her younger sister Josephine, 33, ran a rooming house for traveling salesmen. No one asked why women were never booked there. No one noticed that some boarders never walked out the front gate. The neighbors said the Harper sisters were reserved, church-going, and never late with the rent. Mrs. Calloway on the second floor noticed only one thing. The sisters never let anyone into the basement, not even the plumber when a pipe burst in January 35. Elena was a widow. Her husband, a National Guard lieutenant, had put a bullet in his head in 32. He left debts and an empty bedroom with blood freckled on the wallpaper that she never quite scrubbed away. Josephine had never married. She was engaged once. A week before the wedding, the fiancé ran off to California with another woman. That was in 28. Since then, Josephine stopped smiling. Both attended the First Methodist Church on Boulder Avenue. They took communion every first Sunday of the month. Reverend Hargrove would later say that Elena always lingered longer at the altar rail, but she never told what she confessed. The rooming house had 6 bedrooms. The price per night was 75 cents. Hot tea with honey was included. Elena carried it personally to each boarder before lights out. She said it was a family custom that guaranteed sound sleep. Wesley Norton arrived in Tulsa on March 22, 1934. He was a pharmaceutical rep from Kansas City. 47 years old, wife and daughter back home. He booked a room for 3 nights. After 3 days, he did not return. His wife filed a missing person report. The deputy wrote, "Likely skipped town on the family. Common enough in hard times." The case closed 2 weeks later. No one checked the rooming house on Ash Street. 13 padlocks on the basement door. The same sound, always after midnight. Jack Parsons vanished in May that year. He dealt in furs. Came to Tulsa every 2 months. 52 years old, no family, no one to raise a fuss. Clarence Donovan disappeared in July. A retired railroad clerk, 60, lived alone. His buddies figured he had gone to kin in the country. Theo Vargas, a traveling watch repairman. August, 45 years old. All middle-aged men. All solitary. All without close kin. All picked the rooming house on Ash because it was cheap and a short walk from the depot. Elena kept a oilskin ledger, black pages. She logged everything. Boarder's name, arrival date, valise contents, estimated worth of possessions, marital status. Beneath each entry was a checkout date, but always the morning after arrival. Always. Josephine kept no ledger. Josephine followed orders. Elena told her when to brew the tea. Elena told her when to snap the 13 padlocks. Elena told her where to stash the goods. In the attic of the rooming house were 4 pine crates. In each, items sorted. Pocket watches in one, billfolds in another, papers in the third, clothing in the fourth. Everything ranked by value. Gold watches on top, silver below, fat billfolds in front, empty behind, documents alphabetized. Elena kept the potbelly stove burning year-round, even in July when the mercury kissed 100F. Mrs. Calloway once asked why. Elena said she liked the smell of hickory, it reminded her of childhood on the farm. But in that smoke were birth certificates, driver's licenses, love letters, photographs. Anything that could tie the vanishings to the house. In the basement there was an odor. Mrs. Calloway spoke of it later. Swedish, cloying, but not foul enough to call the sheriff. She thought rats or spoiled turnips. Normal in those old rooming houses. January 1935. A water line burst in the basement. Floodwater lapped the ground floor. The landlord sent for a plumber. Elena refused entry. She said she would patch it herself. For a week the building had no running water. Finally she allowed the plumber into one corner of the basement. She stood over him the whole time. Josephine was there too. Neither blinked. The plumber fixed the line in 20 minutes. He left. That night he told his wife something stank down there, but he let it go. Not his concern. 13 padlocks on the basement door. The same sound. Mrs. Calloway heard it near weekly, sometimes twice, always late, always in darkness. The rooming house ran without full guest logs. In those days plenty of small outfits did. Deputies did not make routine checks. Pay your property tax. Keep the peace. The Harper sisters kept the peace. Elena was 41 when she killed the first man. Probably Wesley Norton, but no one can swear to it. Maybe there was someone before, maybe before they came to Tulsa, because the sisters had moved there only in '33. Before that, they lived in a speck of a town outside Muskogee. There too they let rooms. There too several men disappeared, but no one looked into it. No one linked the dots. The records from that time were lost in the war or never kept. It was a nowhere place. Drummers vanished. It happened. In Tulsa, Elena refined the method. The boarder arrived at dusk, road-weary, hungry. Elena offered supper, beans or cornbread with sorghum, then the tea with honey. In the tea was chloroform, not much, just enough for a coma-like sleep. He did not stir when the sisters entered the room. What followed is known only from Elena's statements, but she lied through the whole inquiry. Flipped stories, recanted. The court psychiatrist wrote that Elena possessed keen intelligence and perfect awareness of her deeds, yet was incapable of empathy. Josephine said nothing. During questioning she sat mute, eyes on the floorboards. When pressed she repeated, "Elena knows. Ask Elena." The psychiatrist wrote about Josephine. Absolute submission to the elder sister, profound loss of self, absence of personal agency, operates as an automaton. In the rooming house were 2 hammers, 1 sledge, 1 ball peen. In the basement they found rope, jars, rags soaked in some chemical. All stashed under warped floorboards. Beneath the boards was a pit 6 feet deep. There lay the bodies. 7 bodies in varying decay, some wrapped in feed sacks, others dusted with lime, all stripped of valuables. The oldest was nearly bones. The experts pegged a man around 50. Died about 2 years prior, 1934. Most likely Wesley Norton. Body number 2, less rotted, man 45-50. Died 18 months before, probably Jack Parsons. And so on. 7 bodies, 7 men, 7 lives that ended in the rooming house on Ash Street. But in Elena's ledger were 11 entries, not 7. For bodies were not in the basement or were elsewhere, or the count was off. No one ever settled it. Mrs. Calloway was questioned 7 times. Each time she said the same. 13 padlocks. After midnight, the same sound. Sometimes she also heard something heavy hit the floor. Once, twice. Then nothing. They asked why she never reported it. She answered, "Wasn't my place." The sisters were quiet. No one griped. I figured they were fixing something. It was Oklahoma in the '30s. Folks didn't poke into others' business, especially not 2 pious widows who went to church and took communion regular. The grocer at number 11 testified that Elena bought lime. Lots of lime. He once asked what for. Elena said to kill rats in the basement. He bought it. The druggist on Main testified that Elena bought chloroform. She said it was for neuralgia, she had bad teeth. She bought small bottles monthly, nothing odd. Every purchase had a reason. Elena was sharp, she knew how to stay under suspicion. An anonymous call came August 14, 1936. Someone rang the sheriff's office. A man, young voice, said only, "Ash Street 23 rooming house. Basement, funny smell." Then hung up. No one ever learned who. Maybe a lineman. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe someone who walked away, but that was unlikely. The victims did not walk away. Deputies arrived next morning. They knocked. Elena opened, smiled, invited them in, offered tea. The deputies declined, said they had a complaint about a smell. They wanted the basement. Elena did not argue. Certainly, officers. Probably the rats. Eve got a rat problem down there. She fetched the keys, led them down the narrow stairs. Josephine stayed topside by the banister. Said nothing. watched Elena descend with the law. The basement door had 13 padlocks. Elena opened them one by one. The same sound misses. Calloway had heard for 2 years. Metallic, heavy, final. The basement was dim, damp, the stench thick. One deputy clicked on a flashlight, swept the beam. Old rockers, crates, some tools, everything looked ordinary. Then he spotted the loose planks. Beneath, something dark. The smell poured from there. He pried the planks and saw. Elena stood behind him. She did not bolt, did not scream, waited calm. When the deputies turned, she said, "I knew you'd come eventually." The trial dragged nearly 2 years. Scores of witnesses. Testimony all over the map. Some swore the sisters were regular folks. Others that something had always felt off. Mrs. Calloway testified about the 13 padlocks. The smell, Elena stoking the stove in summer, the fact no women ever boarded there. The grocer about the lime, the druggist about the chloroform, the plumber about being barred from the full basement. The landlord testified the sisters always paid on the nail. Never a complaint, never a ruckus. Reverend Hargrove of First Methodist testified that Elena and Josephine were model congregants. Attended service, took communion, helped with the clothing drive, never a whisper of trouble. Elena flipped her story during the trial. Once she said Josephine did it all, then that she acted alone, then that they worked as a team. Finally, she said something entered verbatim into the record. Men have always taken from women. Taken money, taken bodies, taken dignity, left debts, left fatherless children, left empty rooms with blood on the walls. We only took back. The court psychiatrist interviewed Elena 5 times. His report's key finding: the defendant exhibits full mental capacity. She is intelligent, methodical, and entirely conscious of the consequences of her actions. Yet she displays zero empathy and a deep-seated hatred of the male sex, likely rooted in personal trauma and the wider experience of patriarchal tyranny. Josephine said nothing, sat in the courtroom head down. When the judge asked her direct, she answered, "I don't recall. Elena told me what to do." The psychiatrist wrote about her. Total subservience, no independent will, functions as an extension of the elder sister. Removed from Elena, she would likely be unable to operate alone. Josephina's attorney tried to show duress, that Elena coerced her, that she feared refusal, but there was no proof. Josephine bore no bruises, never ran, never sought help. The court ruled they acted in concert with premeditation, methodically, for at least 2 years. Elena drew death, Josephine life. Elena took the verdict stone-faced, filed no appeal. She told the judge, "I'd do it again." The sentence was carried out January 10, 1938. Elena Harper was hanged at 6 a.m. in the state penitentiary at McAllister. She declined a minister. Her last recorded words: "I regret nothing." Josephine survived the war behind bars. After the war, when the penal code softened, her case was revisited. The sentence cut to 15 years. She walked free in 1951. She was 49. No one knows what became of her. The records go quiet. No trail of where she went, whether kin took her in, whether she lived alone, whether she even drew breath much longer. The rooming house on Ash Street was padlocked. The building still stands. Now it's apartments. People live there, raise kids. They do not know what was in the basement. But there is something more, something the inquest never said aloud. In Elena's ledger were 11 names. In the basement were 7 bodies. For men vanished without corpse or trace. Deputies looked into the hamlet outside Muskogee where the sisters had lived before. Their 2 men had disappeared, at least 3, maybe more. No one kept score. The files were lost in the war or never written. It was a forgotten dot on the map. Salesmen vanished. It happened. But there was one more thing. Found by accident. In 1948, during renovation, workers pried open a hollow in the basement wall. Inside was a Prince Albert tin. In the tin, a letter. The letter was addressed to no one, in Elena's hand. Dated July 1936, 1 month before arrest. In the letter, Elena detailed her first kill, not in the rooming house. Long before, when she was 20, still under her parents' roof, when her father drank, when her father beat her mother, when one night the father simply did not rise. Then I realized it was possible, that it isn't so hard, that the world doesn't end if a man disappears, that no one asks too many questions, that life goes on. The letter never entered evidence. Prosecutors called it possible forgery or fantasy. Elena was dead. She could not be quizzed, but the handwriting was hers. Graphology confirmed it, though officially it was buried. The tin went to archives. Then the archives burned in a fire. The documents vanished, the letter too. Only the discovery report remained, and the name of the deputy who found it. Andrew Villanueva. He died in '62. Left no note. 13 padlocks on the basement door. The same sound misses. Calloway heard for 2 years. Maybe longer. Maybe from the day the Harper sisters arrived in Tulsa. Maybe even before, in that speck outside Muskogee. How many victims in truth? 11? 15? 20. Elena killed her first at 20. She was hanged at 45. That is 25 years. If one a year on average, 25 victims. If more often, then more. But that is only arithmetic. Numbers on a page. The truth is somewhere in the courthouse basement or gone forever. Only memory lingers. And the questions. Did the Harper sisters act alone, or were they part of something larger? Were there other rooming houses, other cellars, other women who decided men had taken enough? In the 30s, thousands vanished across the United States. Most were men, drummers, tinkers, loners without kin to sound alarms. Police had no manpower, no budget, no inclination to hunt. They were nobodies. They disappeared. It happened. Maybe some ended on Ash Street. Maybe not. Maybe they ended elsewhere, in another cellar, in another house run by other women with matching scars. No one investigated, no one connected. Each case stood alone, each vanishing a fluke. Only when 7 bodies turned up in one hole did the story grow too loud to ignore. But even then the probe was half-hearted. For bodies never surfaced. The letter in the tin was dismissed. The Muskogee files were lost. Josephine stayed mute. Elena did not tell all. The truth was interred. Along with Elena, along with the unfound dead, the rooming house on Ash Street 23 still stands. In the basement someone lives now, maybe a grad student, maybe a young couple. They do not know what was there. They do not know about the 13 padlocks, the smell, the planks under which men lay. The basement door was replaced in the 50s. New pine, modern Yale lock, 1 deadbolt, no scrape of iron on iron. But ask the old-timers on Ash Street, some remember. Some heard from their folks about the rooming house, about the sisters, about the men who never left. Some, even now, cross the street at twilight. They say the air feels thick there, that something stayed behind, something deliberate and unyielding. Superstition, sure, but superstitions sprout from truth, from memory, from what people glimpsed and could not name. The 13 padlocks, the grind of metal, the basement reek, Elena with her ledger, Josephine who only obeyed. And the biggest question, the one no one answered. Why did no one speak up sooner? Why did neighbors stay quiet 2 years? Why did the grocer sell lime? Why did the druggist not flag a woman buying chloroform monthly? Was it apathy, fear, or something else? Maybe people knew. Maybe they refused to know. Maybe in some corner of their souls they understood. Maybe they figured those traveling men didn't matter, that no one would miss them, that the world spun on fine without them. Elena said in court, "Men have always taken from women." How many women in that courtroom thought, deep down, she had a point? How many women in those years carried their husbands' debts? Raised children of men who skipped town? Wore bruises from men who stayed? No one asked. No one wanted the answer. Verdict rendered. Case closed. Elena hanged. Josephine caged. Rooming house shuttered. But it was not the end, because the questions hung around, because bodies stayed missing, because the letter in the tin spoke of a first kill, of a father, of a 20-year-old girl who learned one could murder and keep breathing. And something else lingered, something no one says out loud, something tucked at the bottom of the trial transcript. In Elena's final statement, just before the gavel, there is a line, a question she put to the judge. And if everyone knew and no one acted, then who is truly guilty? The judge did not reply. He ordered the question expunged, but the court reporter had already typed it and now it sits in the file. If someone digs long enough, an unanswered question, like 4 bodies without graves, like the letter in the tin that burned, like Josephine who vanished after release. Nothing quite lines up. There is no tidy closure. There is no justice that settles every soul. Only the rooming house on Ash Street remains, the door with 1 deadbolt, the basement where someone lives now, and the memory of folks who heard from their parents about the 13 padlocks, about the smell, about the sisters. And there is that question, Elena's question, the one that should seal the file but cracks it open again. If everyone knew, the grocer, the druggist, the plumber, Mrs. Calloway, all the neighbors, why did no one shut that door sooner? Maybe because that door was not locked the same for everyone. Maybe for some it was barred from within and for others from without. Maybe Elena and Josephine were not the only captives in that house. Maybe everyone there lived in some kind of cellar, in some dim place where only 13 padlocks are heard and the scrape of iron. Is guilt only for those who kill or also for those who see and stay silent? Because the story of the Harper sisters is not merely the story of 2 women who murdered 7 men. It is the story of a town that chose not to know, of people who heard the 13 padlocks and rolled over to sleep, of a system that did not hunt the missing because they were nobody. And this story did not end in 38 when Elena swung. It did not end in 51 when Josephine walked free. It did not end when the house was gut renovated and new tenants moved in. This story goes on. Every time we hear something odd next door and do not knock, every time someone vanishes and we think probably just left, every time we spot something wrong and say not my affair. 13 padlocks on the door. 1 sound, 1 silence. And in that silence the question no one wants to hear. Who locks that door?